Guys, Matt Haycox here, and welcome to another episode of No Bollocks with me, Matt Haycox. I've got Anthony Chiavalo in the house. I normally save my guest names to the end of the introduction, but I was so scared about that tongue twister of a name that I'll get it out first. But Anthony is the founder and CEO of Valo Media, and he is an entrepreneur. He's a marketeer, and he is a performance marketing expert. We've had a few performance marketing guys on the show before. So it's always interesting for me to, I guess, either compare notes, compare and contrast, see what different strategies people are using. My audience is a gang of entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs, all businesses, medium businesses, whether they're using agencies or whether they're trying to do this themselves. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to hearing me pick your brains and seeing what you've got to say. So thanks for joining us all the way from New Jersey, right here in my Dubai living room.
My pleasure, Matt. Thanks for having me, and welcome back from Everest, by the way.
Thank you very much. So set the scene for you. Obviously, you're a performance marketer now. You're an entrepreneur. I know you own a magazine as well. You're a publisher of a magazine. How did you learn about marketing? How did you get into business? And how would you like to describe yourself?
Yeah, so I would absolutely describe myself as an entrepreneur and somebody who's really cut my teeth from a sales perspective in New York City. So started my career not quite in marketing, but in a boiler room style startup, right? 100 outbound calls a day, smile and dial kind of thing, getting people on the phone, getting them to buy into your idea, which at the time was in the media and the publishing world. So we were, we were producing special interest reports for major daily press like Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Washington Post. And that just taught me so much about ownership and about, entrepreneurship. And it really planted the seed. This was probably back, 2007, 2008, right after I graduated, planted the seed to be an entrepreneur because in a way that company was almost like an incubator for, entrepreneurship. And it just set me on a path towards, starting a couple businesses, starting my digital magazine that eventually led to where I am now with my own agency, with our own marketing consultancy. And I'm actually writing a book as well about brand powered media and how, the best brands are bridging the gap between performance marketing and brand building. And so for me, it's just like a marriage of my passions. Like I loved sales, I loved communication and media and publishing. And ultimately, I did study marketing in school, but I didn't really even enter the marketing industry, until probably quite a few years later, right? Because I was doing a lot of sales and then, from there, more like account management stuff. And then eventually as digital started to grow, found myself doing more and more of that. And so really just getting in on the ground floor on some of that, social media stuff way back when.
You talk about working in or cutting your teeth in a New York boiler room style operation. I mean, when you're saying those words, I can conjure up images in my mind of what I imagine is that Wolf of Wall Street, hustle and bustle, guys who lived 2 hours outside of New York because they can't afford to be in New York, but they're there in the suits hoping to make a few quid. I mean, is it really a different hustle culture to anywhere else in the world? Is it what it looks like on TV?
I would say that's a pretty accurate portrayal. So yeah, I had the 2-hour commute each way. I did that for on and off for 15 years, but certainly in the very beginning, I was doing that 5 days a week, at your desk by 8 a.m. We were in a tiny room, probably no bigger than like 1,500 square feet. And you're in there, you're packed in with like 15 other sales reps. We're all in our, early 20s. We have like our boss who's sitting at the end of the table. And back then, everything was through the phone. Like, yeah, we had email, but for the most part, like our job was just to call people. And back then it was like, it was something that was new to a lot of like media buyers and marketing people. They're not used to getting phone calls at the time, at least not selling what we were selling. It was very much akin to that Wolf of Wall Street where it's the hustle culture. And anyone who's been to New York, as your listeners can attest, it's a different energy there. It's a different vibe, right? Back when I first took that job, I had the alternative of a better paying job, but it was closer to my house in New Jersey. I like living by the beach. I like surfing. I like being outdoors. So I live near the beach intentionally. But for my career, I was like, I really need to be where the action is. And so I ended up turning down a better paying job that was like, 15 minutes from my house by the beach to take this more challenging job, because I was like, you know what, the skills that I'll be building here just seem like it's where I want to go, in the direction that I wanted to go. And also you can't beat the energy of the city. Everyone is always, on a mission. Everyone's, hustling somewhere, walking fast with some place to go, somewhere to be, some place to go. And it is a whole culture, and for the folks that live there, it's a whole vibe, right? But it's also, there's a lot of commuters too. And so when you're just starting your career, it's hard to live and work in the city, right? It's pretty expensive, and you're not making a lot of money. I think we were making, $30,000 a year back then. So
I remember going to New York for the first time when I was 16. I went for my 16th birthday, Christmas, December, 1996, I think I'll have gone, 96, 97.
nice.
And it really was, back then, everything I imagined it would be with the hustle and bustle. I mean, I remember going out at midnight to go to the theatre, to go to the cinema, walking and, steam coming out the subway, the grates of the subway, and all of the restaurants still open, the sidewalk guys making noise and movement, and I guess like nowhere else in the world like it. So you studied marketing at a university, I think you said. Obviously, you're a marketeer now. And I did about 6 weeks of university, so never really did much, let's say, formal business studying. But I did study it in I guess what you would consider high school. I did 2 years of business and economics back then. But having studied business formally, and then having operated in business, and spent the last 25 years and still to this day reading many business books. For me, what is business curriculum versus what is real world business, and the content of business books that I would read, the two barely overlap. I have a very keen interest in marketing. I would not consider myself an expert by any stretch, but I have a very keen interest in it. And the marketing books and the marketing theories that I read of today, again, couldn't feel any further removed from the, let's say, traditional marketing education I had as part of a business degree or part of a business at high school. I mean, would you agree with that sentiment?
I would totally agree. I would say when I graduated college, I feel like that's when my education really began. And that includes what I would read in business and finance books, but also just what you learn on the job. And I feel like that is so much more valuable. I feel like, this idea of a traditional 4-year degree, whether it's even relevant anymore or if it's even worth the cost, is, I think, all being called into question. And at the same time, I felt that the majority of what I learned came after the fact. Now, there are certain benefits. A lot of people build, lifelong networks in school. I only keep in touch with a few of my friends from college, so I could understand how some people might have, these networks that are built over their time there that ultimately result in business partnerships and clients and opportunities, right? But for me, I pretty much learned everything and built a lot of my relationships after the fact. And that first job, I'm still the closest with the people and the colleagues that I met there, even more so than some jobs that I had after for even longer periods of time. For whatever reason, it's that first job where you just build these lifelong connections, right? And then for me, like, return on relationships has been really crucial in business. And so not just taking what you learn, but the relationships that you've built have been really what's propelled my own business forward. I've been doing my own thing now for over 5 years, and we've been growing pretty consistently. And I contribute a lot of that, to those relationships that I've built over the years throughout my career.
I think for me is one of the big issues with, let's say, marketing education, or not keeping on top of new marketing information books or whatever it may be as it comes out, is that whilst the basic principles of marketing may be, gain attention, build brand, build trust, take it somewhere down a funnel, the mediums that we deliver that message on are, they're not just changing a bit every few years. I mean, there's wholesale changes in total concept. I'm only 44, and I've been in business 25 years plus. First, I guess, let's say my first full cycle in business, running a national chain of leisure venues, was completely not pre-internet, but pre any kind of social media. I mean, I think in the very back end of that business, LinkedIn was just starting to happen. I mean, you know, we were delivering our message on printed flyers, walking around streets, you know, sticking them in people's hands. You know, then it's in social media, then it's, you know, delivering messages by still creative, then it's with videos, then it's taking a video and people only want to watch a video for 4.5 fucking seconds. So how do you condense your message that quick? And it's just, you know, the underlying principles may be the same, but the mediums change so rapidly that you know, you're out of date within months.
Yeah. It is evolving super fast. And to your point, you know, the fundamentals, those are kind of the same, but attention spans are lower than ever. But at the same time, people are binging on shows for 6 hours at a time. So it's like, you know, it depends on the medium, and it depends on your brand and what channels you're, you know, what your channels you're popping up on based on where your audience is, right? So I feel like the need for a customized approach based on exactly who you're trying to reach is really important. Like if I'm marketing my own agency, probably going to be doing something very, very differently than what I'm doing for a client that's reaching a consumer audience, right? And at the same time, we live in a world where not only are things evolving so rapidly, but there's just so much fragmentation, right? There's a new social media platform spinning up every other year or faster. And at the same time, you know, people are craving more human connection, and they're craving more analog experiences in a world that is just overloaded with digital, especially these younger generations, right? They grew up with an iPhone in their hand. They don't know any different. But at the same time, they're craving these, you know, nostalgic and more analog experiences. So there is a shift sort of happening. What's old is new again. And so not only do we look at marketing and sales fundamentals, the art of persuasion and messaging and all that good stuff, but how are brands showing up and how are they building an emotional connection and a resonance with their audience and engaging through longer form content, whether it be, you know, podcasts or branded mini series that are actually entertaining to watch as opposed to an ad that no one wants to see. And then when it comes to social media, you've got 3 seconds to capture somebody's attention, right? And that's on the other end of the spectrum. And so when we develop a campaign for a client, you know, those first 3 seconds are crucial. So what does the hook look like? How are we getting people to watch past that 3 seconds, and how are we building audiences to then re-engage who have already kind of raised their hand and shown interest in your content? And so it's part art, it's part science, and data plays a big part, but there also has to be that human element as well.
Most business advice, it's motivational fluff. It's empty promises and it's untested ideas by people who have never even tried to apply them. It's bollocks, but you're not going to get that here. And that is why I call it No Bollocks. The No Bollocks newsletter is straight talking, high impact, zero time wasting, tried, tested, and immediately actionable. 2 emails a week, insider strategies, brutally honest insights, and the answers to the questions that you're asking, or you should be asking. And the best part, you're going to learn more in 10 minutes than most people learn in a 3-year MBA. Over 20,000 people a week are already in. So don't be the one that's missing out. Hit the link in the show notes, because you just need 1 email that could be the one that changes everything.
I mean, talk about changing mediums and shortening attention spans. I mean, how does your magazine perform? I mean, again, you know, I'm old enough to remember the glory days of print, and you know, even to this day, when I'm back in England, I still like to go and buy all of the physical newspapers on a Sunday and sit there and read them all and you know, eat my breakfast with them. But in terms of the delivery of information via the medium of magazine, I mean, in my head, it's just diminishing and diminishing and diminishing. I mean, how do you set your magazine apart and keep the eyeballs on it?
So it is a digital magazine, and so that helps, right? And so search engine optimization, or what's called SEO, is a big part of how we, you know, get readers to the actual articles. And then social and email plays a big component as well. And so the publishing world, to your point, has been transformed. I think the print readership is going down, but at the same time, people are still kind of craving this more traditional experience. But also, everything is now mobile first. So how is our content designed for a mobile first environment? And so when we're thinking about AI and now the prevalence of large language models, and now Google is incorporating AI summaries for magazines, we have to adapt, and we have to ask, okay, what are some of these large search engines prioritizing advertising from a user perspective, and they want to find answers to questions. They want to provide better results. And at the same time, there's more ads than ever appearing on the Google, search engine results page when you're typing in specific queries, right? So we're being overloaded with ads. And where I've differentiated my digital magazine is that you'll go there and you're not going to see a ton of ads. You're going to see long form content, quality editorial, quality over quantity in terms of the volume of content that we're pushing out. And you're not going to find a website that's covered in ads. If you go to like any major publisher, there's ads everywhere. There's ads in the article. There's ads popping up. They're in the top. They're sliding in from the left, the right. It's infuriating from a user perspective, right? So I think that's been something that we've differentiated on as well.
And how do you balance that user experience with monetary income? As a user, as a reader, I can completely agree with what you're saying. It drives me fucking mental when you can't see the article for the ads. But I guess as a publisher, they're doing it for a reason. How do you make sure you make enough money without jeopardizing user experience?
Yeah, it's a tough one. So for us, we've found a lot of success in like sponsored content. So actually working with a brand to create sponsored articles. And then what we'll do is we'll actually tack on a marketing campaign. So, instead of just running ads that are so invasive, we'll take a sponsored piece of content. We'll clearly label it as sponsored, but it'll be a brand that we actually believe in. So the magazine's focus is on like, conscious lifestyle, sustainable brands, and, travel, adventure travel. So we typically work with brands that align with our mission and that sort of thing. And so if we feature a sponsored brand, it will be something that we feel is actually something that we want to promote to our audience. And what we'll do is we'll offer a custom marketing campaign to that brand where we'll actually take their content, we'll amplify it across social and digital media, whether it be on Google or through Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. And we'll obviously drive traffic to the article, but more importantly is we'll actually build audiences off of the individuals who engage with that piece of content. And that gives the brand an audience that's primed and ready to learn more, because it takes a lot of touch points, for somebody that wants to buy from you. Okay,
so it's not just let's say a scattergun media approach. It's effectively using the magazine as a top of funnel and creating that funnel to channel it all the way down to lead gen and have some tangible takeaways for your advertisers.
100%, yeah. And we did a campaign for Frontiers North. They do subarctic travel and they specialize in Northern Lights tours, and you get to like drive these electric dune buggies across the tundra. And we did an article for them, and we just kind of like, it was again top of funnel. Hey, this is this really cool travel company. This is what they offer. Check out these amazing photos of the Northern Lights that you could see. And then we just boosted it essentially on Facebook for not a huge budget, and they were able to triple the sales of their Northern Lights package just from that one campaign. So phenomenally successful. But at the same time, the magazine is not a big revenue driver for me. It's sort of a top of funnel for my own marketing agency as well, because it opens the door. I can build connections with brands, and I can even offer them free earned media, free PR, very similar to how someone might do with a podcast. Hey, come on my podcast. Let me talk to you. Let's talk business. Let's talk shop. And then that opens the door to a relationship with that person. And that opens the door to a relationship with that brand. And then I can say, oh, by the way, my marketing agency offers this full suite of performance marketing solutions. I don't know if you guys are currently, working with someone, but we'd love to be your second option, and then you build that rapport, you offer something of value, you get to know the person, and you never know what doors that could open further down the line if they send a referral. And so it's also a business development tool. And then lastly, it's a tool for me to connect with people and individuals that I find of interest. And so I've interviewed big wave surfers, Grammy winning musicians, things that I'm interested in. And I just use it as a way to kind of just advance my own knowledge and connect with like-minded individuals.
So let's talk performance marketing. So I guess, for anyone listening who's not familiar with the term, tell me if you disagree, but I would describe performance marketing as, let's call it, paid media that can be tracked to, effectively get a much clearer ROI than the more blanket advertising. We're talking Google PPC, we're talking Instagram, Facebook, etc., paid stuff. So that's your bread and butter. That's your specialism. So I'm a small business owner. I am selling televisions, and I need to drum up some trade. I think Google Ads. I jump on Google myself. I create some campaigns using their algorithms, and I put a bit of money behind it. Am I going to wake up tomorrow with lots of conversions and money in the bank?
You may, but it's very unlikely. Google it's a pretty complex ecosystem. Now, they did make it easier for small businesses with their smart ads, and hey, just enter your credit card and give us some information and we'll take care of the rest. And maybe that works for some people, but for the most part, you really need a solid strategy. And many clients that we work with try and do it themselves. Some are moderately successful, but for the most part, we audit, hundreds of campaigns a year, and we've just found a lot of fundamentals missing. The tracking is not configured correctly. They're not informing the algorithm properly in terms of how to optimize what you're bidding on, whether it be the type of conversion that you want to go after, whether it be sending the right audience building signals to the algorithm, right? So I think you have to have very, very clean data, and you have to make sure that you're feeding the algorithms the correct data signals. And that's the biggest mistake that we see with clients. Believe it or not, 90% of the work is in proper setup and proper strategy. And once it's in place, it can run pretty efficiently with, certain weekly optimizations, adjustments to the bid strategy, testing different creative and audiences. Certainly there's a lot that we do on an ongoing basis, but the proper setup is really, really key. For small businesses, I would say it depends on the budget, right? Google wants you to spend a few thousand a month. You might be able to get away with that, but at the same time, you're competing against other brands that are spending a lot more. So I would say proceed cautiously, make sure your tracking is really buttoned up. And so typically we'll use a combination of Google Analytics, what's now called GA4, and Google Tag Manager. And that will help you set up key website events such as completed conversions, but also we measure behavioral conversions. And that's looking at quality signals, because the likelihood of somebody converting on the very first touch point with your brand is very low. So we need another way to send Google or Facebook or whatever it may be. We need another way to send them positive signals that, hey, this is the actual type of customer we're trying to reach. And so behavioral conversions are a really cool way of doing that. It could be like time on site, number of page views, just to make sure that this is an actual customer who's interested in what we have to offer versus a bot or somebody that lands on the site and then bounces after 2 seconds. And so that's something that we use to build these audiences, because retargeting is really important. You gotta make sure you're retargeting the right audiences.
If I've got limited budget, how am I deciding between Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Google Ads? What's right for my business?
So it depends on what you're selling. If you want to use the example that you had shared, the televisions, I would say Google is probably a good place to start, because it's the lowest funnel stage, and then it's also one of the highest intent channels, meaning that people are going to Google searching for something very specific. So it's easy to show up for, it's easy to have your ads show up for somebody searching for, to buy a new television, right? As opposed to Facebook and other social media channels, which are better for brand awareness. Certainly they offer full funnel objectives, but again, more of a discovery platform. Like someone's not going to Facebook necessarily to search for a specific product. They go to Amazon, they go to Google, maybe they ask ChatGPT or something. But for the most part, it's more of a discovery channel. Can be very effective because, again, I've written a book about this, is the importance of brand marketing, the importance of investing in awareness channels and building your brand. I have clients on the other end of the spectrum that invested heavily in the lower funnel, and it worked for a while, but after a time, it's just the performance has diminished significantly because they ignored their brand for 10 years and they went all in on paid search, completely disregarding the earlier stages in the funnel. And it's really impacted their business negatively. And now we're actually working with them to kind of reverse that. Let's look at this, more from a full funnel perspective.
So let's flesh out what you've just been saying there, and I'll ask you it in a real life context of a business that I was until recently invested in, no longer anymore, but still kind of familiar with the business model. This is a own brand. Well, no, it's a online retailer of footwear and handbags, ladies footwear and handbags, own brand. and it's half multi-brand, third-party brands. They generate the vast majority of their web traffic, well, it's not web traffic, but the vast majority of their traffic and their conversions from Google Shopping, from paid search on shopping. But their lifetime value of customer is basically order number one, because these customers are never repeating. And as a business, it's been, I guess, stuck with a myriad of problems, but those problems all revolve around the fact that there's no brand loyalty. If someone wants to buy a pair of UGG boots or Levi jeans or whatever it may be, they don't care where they buy them from. They want to buy them from whoever has them available, cheapest, in stock, trust. And and obviously the cost of clicks is going up and up and up and up over the years. Really, that business is getting squeezed every which way. How would you take that as a problem? And maybe it's more than just a performance marketing issue. Maybe you're going to filter into other things. But use that as your case study for me.
Yeah. So the first thing I'd want to do is just look at the data and see what the data is telling us. So you mentioned it's kind of a one and done, right? People purchase one product, they don't really come back. So to me, that sounds like a brand issue. There hasn't been a proper investment in the brand, and maybe they over-invested in lower funnel transactional channels, as opposed to like, hey, what is the story that we're telling that makes our brand different than every other brand out there? Otherwise, it's just a race to the bottom. And you don't want to be in that position as a company, as a brand. What I was saying earlier in our conversation, what's old is new again. Like, think Mad Men era, right? They used to tell stories. They used to run big campaigns around brands and tell these stories about what makes our brand different. Is it our process for manufacturing? Is it the story of our founders? Is it how our products, perform better? And there needs to be that connection, that emotional resonance with your customers that make them want to buy from you. Because at the end of the day, if you're just focused on the transactional channels, you're just going to end up paying more and more to acquire customers. So if you want to lower your acquisition costs, you want to drive brand loyalty and repeat purchases, higher lifetime value, you got to invest in that brand.
And I was going to say, and sort of cut across you, but I guess for many small business owners in that position, it probably sounds like a bit of a catch-22, because you're saying if you want to lower your cost per acquisition, you need to spend money on top of funnel, or not so much top of, but on brand building, on repeat awareness, etc. But to do that, you have to spend that money effectively before you're making the sales, and I guess it is very much an investment with a future payoff. But I guess for many people, they're scared to pull the trigger and can't see 6, 12, 24 months down the line.
Absolutely. Look, it has to be a balance. So I understand there's urgency around generating sales. So if you can invest uniformly across the funnel, right, but actually do it in a smart way. Like when we have a new client that we signed on, and they had gone through 4 paid media agencies. They were just so burned out. None of them were able to get results. And we audited everything, and we're like, look, it's very clear. You guys are just rushing to the bottom of the funnel. You want leads. The problem is the people that you're targeting have no idea what you're offering. They're coming to you. It was for like a mental health treatment. And the people are coming to learn about whether they're even depressed in the first place. And you're trying to push them towards this, radical new treatment. They're still trying to figure out if they're even depressed. So there's so much education that has to be done, right? And so that's a little bit of a different example, but it's a very similar you have to invest in the top of funnel. It doesn't have to be a ton of money. There's a lot of things you can do organically on social media through old school grassroots marketing, word of mouth, referrals. There is so much that you can do without investing a ton of money to build that brand. I had a client that just got acquired for $110 million. They got started by passing out flyers themselves on the beach. They started like an acai, bowl company, and they didn't spend a dime on paid media for probably 5 years. And I don't even think they're barely spending anything on paid media at all right now. And yet they've got 200 locations across the country, and I don't even think they've ever invested $1 in Google ads. So the power of brand is real. There's a place for it. Obviously, there's a place for performance marketing, but without brand, your performance marketing campaigns will not be as effective. And this is coming from a performance marketer. So you can trust when I'm saying this. I'm not going to, shoot myself in the foot as a performance marketing agency owner, but I've seen it. There's so many studies that came out. I just got back from Ad Week a few months ago. There was a ton of data that came out around the brands that invested in the brand versus those that didn't. Absolutely night and day in terms of their performance and their results. Nike is a classic example. A few years back, they went all in on lower funnel. It absolutely just had the complete opposite effect. And now they're going back to brand what made them, successful in the first place.
I mean, you mentioned social media, you mentioned organic. I mean, do you think there is still, well, as I say, a place for organic? I guess obviously there's a place for organic, but I mean, do you still think there's much hope in organic in such a overpopulated world where, I mean, even if you are, the best of the best content creator, you're still lucky to get a viral video and get any reach. I read a quote in a book recently that said, efficient paid is the new organic.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point, and I'm absolutely supportive of that viewpoint because, again, I run a paid media agency, so it's easy for us to work with an influencer who's a really good content creator, but maybe doesn't have a ton of reach. So we could pay them, hey, a couple $100, create this really cool video for us about our brand, and we'll trust you to do it and follow these guidelines, and then we could buy the reach with paid media pretty cheap. So it's easy for us to work with like a really dope content creator, get that content, maybe a couple of them, maybe 5 to 10 different content creators, maybe 2 to 3 videos each. And then we can set up a paid campaign and split test all of those pieces of content against each other and drive, hundreds of thousands of video views for pennies on the dollar. Now, okay, video views are great for awareness, but more importantly, we're building audiences. So that also allows us to now retarget the users that watched more than, 3 to 5 seconds of that video in a follow-up campaign that's maybe from the brand. It's a little bit further down the funnel, right? So we use that to build these full funnel campaigns. But at the same time, organic reach is not dead. I was listening to a keynote from Gary Vee, and he's saying this is like the golden age of organic content, but he's also telling you to post 30 times a day, which, is maybe not realistic for everyone. Maybe it is.
I was going to say, it's easy for Gary to say with his 5 million followers and his 30-man personal branding team.
Yeah, well, exactly. And look, I totally get that. So, because I create a lot of content as well, mostly for LinkedIn and some podcasting now. It's a lot of work for sure. But once you get into a good flow, you have a good process. There's some really great resources on Upwork from like the Eastern European region that can help with like video editing that are very, very affordable and can help you churn out, maybe not 30 pieces of content a day. But if you're recording maybe one podcast a month, that might give you 5 to 10 pieces of content, and that, that person could then chop it up, 6-10 different ways for you. So there are ways to achieve that scale for very, very, low investment.
Well, listen, Anthony, it's been a pleasure having you here, buddy. It was always super interesting to hear stuff that I can put into context as well. And I know there's been plenty of value for the audience there too. How do people get in touch with you? And I guess at what stage can people work with you? I mean, I know you talk about dealing with startups through to Fortune 500 companies, but if someone's only got a little budget, do you still want to talk to them?
I'm happy to talk to anybody. I love giving out free advice. I do it all the time through my LinkedIn page, so people can follow me there. We also publish a blog on the website valomedia.com, and I'd love to connect with anyone that wants to just learn more about marketing. Typically, the brands that we do work with in an ongoing fashion are spending at least a few $1,000s a month on marketing. That's everything from smaller spend to larger spend is our sweet spot. But we're also happy to offer audits to anyone listening that was like, hey, we're spending money on paid media. Is this working? I don't really know. Current agency doesn't have a lot of transparency. Can you take a look? Can you give us your unbiased assessment? We're happy to offer that as well.
Awesome. Listen, we'll put all that in the show notes as well. Anthony, thanks a lot for being here, buddy.
My pleasure, Matt. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to No Bollocks with Matt Haycox. Today's conversation was packed with actionable insights, and I'm super, super grateful that you joined us. Now, our community now boasts 160,000 downloads a month of this podcast, and that is a testament to entrepreneurs just like you who refuse to settle for mediocrity. So don't miss out. Subscribe now and gain exclusive access to the conversations that can transform your business and transform your life. Also, while you're at it, if you could visit www.matt-haycox.com or click the link in the show notes below, and please sign up to the No Bollocks newsletter. That's like the sister newsletter that lives with this podcast. Every week, I send 2 emails, and in just 10 minutes, you're going to gain more knowledge than most people do in a 3-year MBA. So please subscribe, rate, share this episode with someone who needs a No Bollocks boost. And until next time, keep hustling and keep winning.